Hello, students. This is Professor McDermott. In the last lecture, we talked about the very important Hindu religion of the subcontinent of India in much the same way that Judaism helped to give rise to Christianity. So, another great world religion emerged from Hinduism, and that religion is Buddhism, named after its founder, the Buddha. But Buddha was actually not his name, it was his title. I'll explain in a few minutes what that title means. Um, the actual name of the founder of Buddhism is Siddhartha Gautama, who lived from approximately 563 BC until 483 BC. Now, Siddhartha was born in North India. Actually, he was a prince of a small kingdom in North India. His father was the king, so that meant that he started out life in the second caste, the Kshatriya caste. Although, since he became one of the great religious leaders of world history, you might say that he was one of the very few people in Indian history to jump from one caste to another, moving up to the Brahmin caste, the caste of the religious leaders. So Siddhartha's dad, the king, was kind of what we nowadays call a helicopter parent. He was very overprotective. He really wanted to shield Siddhartha from suffering anything bad, and in fact, he really didn't even want his son to know that there was such a thing as suffering in the world. At least that's the story as we have it, as it was written down by the disciples of the Buddha in their sacred writings. According to the stories, in any case, his father, really prevented Siddhartha from seeing any signs of suffering or pain in his childhood. But one day, Siddhartha, the prince, rode out on his little pony, and he saw by the side of the road a poor beggar who was very sick, obviously in a lot of pain. And he found that very hard to understand, because he had never seen suffering before. And then it is said that on another day, Siddhartha rode his pony down the road, and there, next to the side of the road, he saw a dead body. And for the first time, he understood that there was such a thing as death, that this life comes to an end. And that realization really shook him. So, again, according to these founding accounts of Buddhism, Siddhartha devoted the rest of his life to trying to solve this problem of human suffering and to show his followers how to overcome suffering in their lives. Well, Siddhartha did mature into adulthood. He did get married, and he and his wife had a son. But the name that he chose for his son is very significant. He called him Rahula, which means chain. So clearly, Siddhartha saw his family as a chain that was keeping him from pursuing his true goal, which was religious enlightenment and trying to understand how to overcome suffering. So eventually, one night, Siddhartha crept out of the palace secretly, left his wife, left his son, and went out into the world to become a Hindu sannyasin. And you know from the last lecture that a sannyasin was a person who basically lived the life of a wandering beggar, begging for food, really not eating very much, trying to discipline and control his body and his desires in order to become holy. And again, according to the accounts that are passed down to us, the Buddha really went all out on this, like he did in every aspect of life. And it's said that he even got to the point where he was only eating 1 grain of rice per day. But Siddhartha did not find that this path of self-denial gave him any peace. In fact, it just made him more discontented, more grumpy. It really did not help him to achieve any kind of spiritual insight. And so it's said that one day, in disgust and frustration, Siddhartha sat down under a tree and began to meditate. And during that meditation session, he was instantly enlightened, and all of the truths about human life and about the universe were revealed to him. And so this is how Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. That title means the enlightened one. And so what was revealed to Siddhartha there underneath the tree? Well, first of all, Siddhartha decided that instead of extreme self-denial, fasting, and so forth, it was better to pursue a path of moderation. In other words, to eat what you needed to survive, not too much and not too little. Rather than starving yourself, you should simply choose the middle path, the path of moderation. And in the story, it's said that when he had realized this after he came out of his meditative trance, a little girl came up to him with a big bowl of rice, and he ate it, just to show that now he was okay with eating enough to live on. That's why if you ever go into a Chinese restaurant and you see images of the Buddha, you'll notice how he's always fat. Well, he's depicted that way for a couple of reasons. First, because he's a very important person. So he's portrayed as being very happy and prosperous. But secondly, because the Buddha decided it was a mistake to starve yourself and it was okay to eat food in moderation. Also, the Buddha got some insights about Hinduism and things that needed to be eliminated from the Hindu religion, as he believed. So, for his followers, the Buddha would take out a lot of the rituals and ceremonies that were performed by the Hindu Brahmin priests. Also, the Buddha really disliked the caste system. He believed that all people, men and women, were capable of achieving enlightenment and spiritually were equal to one another. He really did not believe that being born into a certain family made you superior to anyone else. And so Buddha tried to get his followers to stop practicing the caste system, although he was not always successful in that. But Buddha's biggest brainwave was a new concept called nirvana. And yes, the famous grunge band from the 90s, led by Kurt Cobain, did name their band after this very important concept in Buddhism. So the Buddha did believe in reincarnation. He kept that from his Hindu upbringing. However, he believed that it was possible to bypass the whole process of endlessly being reborn as another form of life. If you led a good life according to good Buddhist principles, then instead of endlessly being reincarnated, you could go straight to a place he called nirvana. Well, actually, sort of a spiritual reality called nirvana. This was a state of being in perfect bliss, perfect enlightenment, perfect happiness, somewhat like the Christian heaven. And Buddha believed that it was possible for anybody to go to nirvana at the end of their lifetime and avoid being reincarnated if they followed his principles carefully. And that was true not just for men, but also for women. So out of great world religions, we can say that in a way the Buddhist religion has been very open historically to women's participation. And in fact, that's why in Buddhism you have not only monasteries of monks, male monks, but you also have convents of female monks, or as we would call them in the Western world, nuns. all trying to lead a good Buddhist life and to achieve nirvana. And that was very, very attractive to many people, especially if you didn't want to run the chance of being reincarnated as a goat or a cockroach or something like that. Well, anyway, uh, the way to get to nirvana, according to Buddhism, is first to follow the Four Noble Truths, which the Buddha taught to his first followers in a sermon shortly after his experience of enlightenment. And for the Buddha, the first noble truth is simply that life is suffering. Life is suffering. So again, that sort of overwhelming realization as a child that human beings have to face this thing called suffering obviously had left its mark on the Buddha. And so again, for him, the first truth about human life is that life is suffering. So how do we overcome that? Well, the second noble truth that Buddha taught is simply that all suffering comes from our desires. Okay, now that may seem a little strange, but think about it for a second. So, what causes us to suffer? It seems to be normally when we desire something that we really, really want, but can't have for some reason. So it could be a new car, or a great job, or a higher income, or a girlfriend, or a boyfriend, or just to be liked, or loved, or whatever it is. If we desire something and it doesn't come to us, then we feel loss, pain, deprivation, suffering. And so for the Buddha, then, that led to the third noble truth, simply that if we want to overcome suffering, then we have to overcome our desires. And we have to strive not to desire anything in this world. And in that way, we will never be disappointed. Now, that's obviously a very tall order. And, I think for cultures that are not historically Buddhist, there might be people that would question this teaching of the Buddha. For example, they would ask, shouldn't we desire the best for our families? Shouldn't we desire the best for our spouses, for our children, and so forth? Or shouldn't we desire certain goals, like getting a degree, or getting a decent job that contributes to society, or what have you? But in the Buddhist tradition, there is this very strong teaching that we need to be detached from all of those kinds of desires, that we should not be overly attached even to members of our own family. That is, if we really want to be happy. Although, as we'll see in a minute, Buddhists do teach compassion for the whole human race. All right, so if you want to get rid of suffering, you have to get rid of your selfish desires. How do you do that, according to the Buddha? Well, you have to follow what he called the Eightfold Path. So here we go. This is the Eightfold Path, according to Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. First, he said it was very important to have the right views. In other words, to accept the teachings that had been revealed to him about the true meaning of life and the universe. But second, that wasn't enough. You also had to have right intent in all of your actions. And if you think about this, I think the Buddha is right on this point, that it is possible sometimes to do the right thing for the wrong reason. So, for instance, someone might give a great deal of money to charity, not because they really care about the people that they're helping, but simply because they want people to admire them, or they want to get a great reputation as being a very generous person. That would be having the right view, in a sense, without the right intent. Well, the Buddha said that it's very important not only to have the right views, but also, or to even to take good actions, but to do them with the right intention. To do them with the right intention. Third, right speech, using our speech to build up humanity rather than to tear it down. Fourth, right conduct in this life. I think that's self explanatory. Fifth, right livelihood. This is something that Buddhists kind of lead the way on, I think, in the modern world, pointing out great Buddhist leaders like the Dalai Lama, pointing out that it's very important that when we choose a career, that when we choose a profession, that we choose one that actually is doing good things for humanity and not evil things. So we certainly would want to pick a profession where we would hurt other people needlessly or hurt the planet. If we are involved in manufacturing, let's say, in such a way that we are helping to destroy the environment without any concern for trying to conserve it, then to a Buddhist that would be, well, that would not be right livelihood. And we should pursue some other kind of career, something that will help us to live more in harmony with our fundamental principles. And when we find it, we should put forth right effort in everything that we do, especially and including the spiritual life. And in a way, this is where desire comes back into Buddhism, because Buddhists don't lead a totally passive kind of life. They do strive and they do desire something, which is mainly to to lead a good life and to get to nirvana. So that effort gets poured into the spiritual life. Especially, a really devout Buddhist will pray for several hours or meditate for several hours daily. And in doing so, hopefully, is praying or meditating with that quality of right mindfulness. All right, Buddhists really try to clear the mind of any sort of negative influences that would prevent them from growing spiritually. And here's another point where I really agree with Buddhism. I think this is very key, because when we do bad things, or when we have a bad day, or when we act out, when we get angry and so forth, isn't it usually because we allowed some negative thought to creep into our mind and kind of fester there, I like to use the example of road rage. Someone cuts you off or so forth, or someone's in the left lane going really slowly or whatever, and you start to, and that thought gets into your mind and you just can't stand it, and pretty soon you're honking the horn, or maybe even yelling things at them and so forth. It's because, things like that happen to me anyway, when I forget to guard my mind and to not let those negative thoughts come in to do their dirty work. All right, finally, right concentration, also, of course, very important for a devout Buddhist in their life of prayer and meditation. You see this image of the Buddha. He's sitting in the position which Buddhists believe is the most conducive to right concentration, namely the lotus position. So that's the Eightfold Path, the path to nirvana, if you will, for a Buddhist. All right. Well, so that was Buddhism as the Buddha left it. But as I'm sure you know, great world religions do often develop in new directions after the deaths of their founders, sometimes in ways that were not foreseen by the founders of that religion. In the case of Buddhism, there are actually several different kinds of Buddhism. But I want to focus today on the two major branches of Buddhism that are still present in the world today. Hinayana Buddhism. This word Hinayana means the lesser vehicle, or sometimes translated as the smaller boat, because there are fewer Hinayana Buddhists in the world than there are that belong to the other branch, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I think that's really because the Hinayana Buddhists are more strict and more careful about sticking to the Buddha's original teaching. They've made fewer changes. So, for example, Hinayana Buddhists believe that Buddha was a god, or he did become a god in his moment of enlightenment. But Hinayana Buddhists do not believe in praying to Buddha or asking him for favors in prayer, because they believe he's in nirvana and he's enjoying a life of perfect happiness, so he's not really paying attention to anyone on this earth and is not interested in answering people's prayers, so they just let him alone. Um, Hinayana Buddhists really emphasize the pursuit of Bodhi, which means wisdom. So, this branch of Buddhism really, in a way, you could almost describe it more as a philosophy than a religion. It's about the disciplined pursuit of spiritual wisdom. The other branch of Buddhism, the other major branch of Buddhism, is known as Mahayana Buddhism. This word Mahayana means the greater vehicle or the larger boat, because there are many more Mahayana Buddhists in the world than there are Hinayana Buddhists. And it was later to develop, but it was, we can say, fully developed by around 200 AD. Now, Mahayana Buddhists did make a lot of changes to the Buddha's original teachings. They really emphasize not so much wisdom as compassion. Compassion for all living things, compassion for the whole human race and for the planet. They also practice many rituals collectively. Unlike the Hinayana Buddhists, they really do see this need for believers to get together communally and to have ceremonies and rituals together. And they have many beliefs that may seem a little odd. For example, Mahayana Buddhists will make pilgrimages to sacred shrines, like the one in Gandhara, India, where you see on the picture there what is supposedly an actual footprint of the Buddha. So Mahayana Buddhism, we can say, is more concrete. They like holy objects, holy places. And in a way, I think that's because human beings really do have a need for that, a need for ritual and a need for reminders, spiritual reminders, things that they can touch and feel and see. Also, the Mahayana Buddhists believe Buddha was a god, and they do believe he is very interested in our lives, and so they do pray to him on a daily basis, asking him for help with their day-to-day needs. And in fact, in Mahayana Buddhism, there are other powerful spiritual beings who are also worshipped. These are called bodhisattvas. What is a bodhisattva? A bodhisattva is a person who led a great Buddhist life in this world and could have gone to nirvana, but instead chose not to, and chose to stay in this world in the spirit form to help other believers to find their way to nirvana. So in a way, making the ultimate sacrifice out of love for other people, even giving up their own chance for nirvana. That's a bodhisattva, somewhat like the place of angels in Judeo-Christian religion, who are believed to help guide believers to heaven. The bodhisattva's job is to guide believers to nirvana. So those are the two main varieties of Buddhism. Both varieties, but especially the Mahayana type, spread over the network of roads known collectively as the Silk Road, which, thanks to a people called the Sogdians, who were based in what is now today Afghanistan, was a relatively safe place to travel in the late BC period and the early AD period. And so this helped especially the Mahayana Buddhists to spread their teachings and to make disciples in far-flung places. And so as it ultimately developed, Mahayana Buddhism spread northward into China, and especially the region of China known as Tibet. Tibet used to be an independent country that was ruled by the religious leader of Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama, but China, the People's Republic of China, has taken it over, and now the Dalai Lama is an elderly gentleman who goes around the world speaking to people about peace and love and Buddhist ethics, and also trying to get his country back. And from China, it spread into the Korean Peninsula, and from there into Japan. So Mahayana Buddhism took root in the more northerly direction in Asia, while Hinayana Buddhism has the most adherents in the southern and southeastern parts of Asia, including Sri Lanka, which is an island you see there off the southern coast of India, Myanmar, which has been much in the news as a very turbulent place lately politically, Thailand, and Cambodia. But there has been, I would say, great and renewed interest in Buddhism in this country starting in the 1960s. And also with the influx of refugees from Southeast Asia after the Vietnam War, we see that there are many Buddhist practitioners and adherents in this country today as well.